If the biggest story of last week was the Coinbase direct listing, then the story of the weekend was the outrageous fake news being perpetuated about early Coinbase investors and executives dumping nearly all of their shares on the market. It did not happen. It could not have happened. And even the most superficial understanding of a direct listing by the people spreading the news could have prevented it. Here's the entire story. What is up, everybody? I'm Scott Melker, also known as the Wolf of All Streets. Please subscribe to the channel and go ahead and hit that like button. Now, I spent literally the entire weekend on Twitter in a futile attempt to clarify the fake news about Coinbase. It was absolutely exhausting, but felt important because it was insane how crazy this story was. Now, it all starts with the fact that it was a direct listing and not a IPO for Coinbase. I talked about this for weeks, trying to clarify it in videos, in writing, on Twitter, telling people in advance that there was no IPO, which means there were no new shares created to sell to the market to raise cash. In a direct listing, the only shares for sale are those that already exist, meaning that for a direct listing to even occur or exist, the existing investors and the executives have to sell some of their shares. That's the only way there is even a market, period. If they do not agree and register those shares in advance to sell, there can be no direct listing and there can be no market. That is exactly what they did. They registered a small percentage of their shares to sell. So how did this crazy news story begin? Well, it started with one tweet from an account that not a huge account and not someone who is obviously mainstream media or in the space. They shared a spreadsheet that showed all of the shares that were sold and a percentage of shares by each person, which you can see towards the right of the sheet. First, it's a screenshot of a spreadsheet. There's no sources. It's not vetted. This could literally just be made up numbers. There's nobody that's even proved that these numbers are true, even if they're just based on the registered shares for sale. Second, they took it completely out of context, assuming that this was all of the shares that these people held and not just the percentage that they had listed for sale based on the rules of a direct listing. So as they said, the CFO went all out. Chief Product Officer dumped all but 3% of their shares. Okay, it's bad enough, right? It's bad enough that this story went so crazy, and it's bad enough that this was taken out of context. But what's worse is that all of this is obvious to anyone who bothered to take note of the fact that this was a direct listing. Really, just a very basic understanding of a direct listing, and you know that this news is false. But that did not stop some of the biggest accounts on Twitter and some very famous economists and personalities like Peter Schiff and Nassim Taleb from spreading the utterly fake and unvetted news days after it was already proven false. Absolute crazy town. And what's worse is that almost none of these people tried to offer a correction or deleted their tweet. Listen, everybody here has been a victim at some point of fake news. We've all shared a clickbait headline or shared something that was just patently false. And what do we do when that happens? Well, hopefully we either submit a retraction and explain it, or we just delete the tweet so that the news stops. None of these people almost did that. Some people did try to offer some sort of retraction or explanation, or even a little joke about it. But the problem with fake news is that once the train leaves the station, there's no stopping it. You post the fake news and you get thousands and thousands and thousands of retweets. And then a day later you say, oh, that wasn't true. And you get like 700 likes and a bag of Skittles for your efforts. It's absurd, and it's how fake news spreads. And we've seen it so many times. I mean, here's Nassim Taleb's tweet right here. Reverse skin in the game. You package a company to sell it to suckers. Note, when a person with the title of Chief Accounting Officer is dumping shares, you know something is going on. And that was in response to Peter Schiff's tweet. On the same day Coinbase CEO Brian Armstrong was on CNBC publicly pumping coin, he was privately dumping 71% of his shares. Other insider selling included the president, CAO, CPO, and CFO, who dumped 63, 86, 97, and 100% respectively. Union Square Venture Fund also dumped 100%. Well, here are the actual and real numbers. CFO Alessia Haas sold 15% of total holdings. CPO Surajit Chatterjee sold 8%. COO Emily Choi sold 24%. CEO Brian Armstrong sold less than 2%. 2% of his shares, less than 2% of his total holdings. What's worse is that part of this fake news, everybody kept calling the COO a man. They couldn't believe that he had dumped 100% of his shares. Well, the COO is a woman, and she sold 24% of her total shares. Now, what gets me about this, and seems to be a general trend, is that this community is supposed to be free thinkers, freedom lovers, libertarians who are passionate about freedom and getting the government out. But we seem to get extremely agitated and cry scam every time someone takes profit on any trade or actually makes money from their efforts. And even if they did sell their shares, who cares? They built a company worth billions of dollars, 10 years of sweat, sleepless nights, and working their asses off. Who are you to tell them when they should take profit or what they should be able to do? And worse, look deep inside yourself. Every single one of you would have done the exact same thing. Period. I would have absolutely sold a percentage of my holdings if I worked my ass off for a decade to build something. And you're a hypocrite if you say that you wouldn't, because everybody would take profit. If you're a trader, you know that there comes a time on every trade where you have to take some profit, no matter what anyone says. So every successful person is not a scammer. And it's good for all of us if Coinbase does well. We should be celebrating their greatness, cheering them to success, even if you absolutely hate the company, because it's good for crypto and it's good for our entire space. Now, what's crazy is that the Coinbase news was not the only unsubstantiated story of the weekend. It seemed to be the fake news assault on crypto. There was a tweet that went viral stating, right here it is, that the US Treasury to charge several financial institutions for money laundering using cryptocurrencies. Sources. What sources? Have we seen any substantiation? Have we seen any follow through? Does the US Treasury even charge people for financial crimes, or is that the Department of Justice? Then the same account hours later. Sell-off in Bitcoin on Saturday night was done by a Chinese crypto whale through crypto exchange Binance. 9K Bitcoin sold. Completely unsubstantiated. Nobody knows if it's true. And then we got this whopper from disclose.tv. Just in, US imposes sanctions on Russia-linked Bitcoin addresses, when the true story was that they were looking into 28 separate wallets, and there's no overwhelming sanction and no national implications here. Literally, the government was just looking into 28 wallets. There was so much fake news that I tweeted this in sarcasm just to show how insane it is. Then China turned off the lights, sending Russians to block American wallets, while the U.S. Treasury Department prosecuted Bill Gates for putting brain chips in crypto and laundering money through Tesla's factory right after Coinbase dumped all their stock on Mother Teresa. Guys, look into the news you read. Take 5 seconds to think about it before you share it, retweet it, or engage with it. People are generally suckers. They will share anything and they will believe anything that fulfills their own bias. Coinbase did well. They must be scammers. They must have cheated. They must have dumped on it, when in reality, they're a cash flush company that did a direct listing because it was better for the market and did not do an IPO for these very reasons. Think before you tweet. Once again, I'm Scott Melker, also known as the Wolf of Wall Street. Subscribe to the channel, hit the like button. Thank you for listening. I'll see you guys at 2 p.m. today for a live stream with Cosmos. Peace.